I'd like to bring this special meeting of the Morrisville Town Council to order, please. First, I would like to say welcome and thank you for making the time to attend this joint meeting of the Morrisville Town Council and our district representatives from the Wake County School Board. I know it's during the day, and a lot of you have to juggle your schedules to be here, so a warm welcome to you, and it's a really important issue, so we really appreciate you being here. We hear you, and we're here for you. Both council and school board members are here today because we recognize that meeting the educational needs of the students and residents of Western Wake County is becoming increasingly difficult given the spectacular growth that we had in the area. So we are here together convening to try to address that issue. We are here to begin a conversation about how we can share information and ideas to address the issue. Your council seeks to take a more active role to support our school board members because they, in turn, will be taking this information to their school board as well in order to make decisions on behalf of the entirety of Wake County. So we're here to help them, and we appreciate them taking the time to tell us how we can help. Just like you, the other day, asked how you can help us, we're asking them. I want to emphasize that we are all in this together, and this is the first of what we hope is a very productive dialogue. Mr. Fletcher put it very well when he wrote in an email about the purpose of this meeting: identifying potential strategies and obstacles to providing appropriate educational facilities and programs for our growing population. We are here on behalf of the residents and the stories they have shared with us. We hear you. And through us, all of us, you have a seat at this table today. With that, I would like to go around the table and introduce ourselves. My name is TJ Cawley. I'm the mayor of Morrisville. And I want to say once again that I'm very grateful for Kathy Hartenstein and Bill Fletcher for being here and letting us know how we can help. Bill?
I'm Bill Fletcher on the Wake County Board of Education, native to Wake County, live in what would be called Old Cary, District 9, and happy to serve and happy to be here to share some ideas and to listen as well.
Great.
Courtney Tanner, the Planning Director for the Town of Morrisville.
Martha Page, Town Manager.
Steve Rao, the Town of Morrisville, and I want to thank Bill and Kathy for being here and all the citizens who have been very engaged on this issue.
Hi, Kathy Hartenstein, and I am the representative for Morrisville for District 7 and also Northwest Raleigh.
Satish Garamila, Morrisville Town Council, and I would like to thank Kathy and Bill to come here, and along with all the citizens, took a lot of notes, and I'll be looking forward. And my only concern is I have a meeting at 2:30, so I have to leave at 2:15. It was a very short meeting that it was called in, so I tried everything to accommodate.
Yeah. Appreciate that.
Okay, this is not my normal voice. My name is Vicki Scroggins Johnson. I'm the Mayor Pro Tem of Morrisville. I've lived here since 2004, and my children have attended Wake County Public Schools in all formats: magnet, traditional, modified calendar, and we are very proud, and I can speak to almost any of the formats, and I'd like to learn more about reducing barriers so that we can have a good scenario for our students in Morrisville so that everybody and every family can feel like they are supported in their elementary, middle, and high school. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Liz Johnson, Morrisville Town Council, and I also want to extend my heartfelt thanks to everyone that's here today, especially Kathy, Bill, and of course all our citizens.
With that, I'd love to hear from Bill and Kathy about what their thoughts are and their goals and how we can help.
Well, thank you, TJ. If I can use the informality.
Yes, please do.
Okay. About 60 days ago, the school board had a piece of land presented to us for the possible purchase for a future school. 2 of the 20 acres were in Wake County. The other acres were not. And that just kind of brought to a point where we had to do something to say, all right, we're out of greenfield sites in part of Wake County. The density that has grown up in Morrisville and parts of Cary, and it's also in Raleigh, is to the point now where we need to start talking about how might we do things differently as we move forward. I must say that this is the first discussion that we've had with a town planning group, town council members, about what opportunities may be for us to do things differently. Urban schools are not unheard of, not unknown, but we don't know much about them. And we don't have many staff members who know a lot about them. So today we don't have a specific educational program that we would put into a site that's different from what we're used to building. That has to be developed by the school district. And what I was hopeful of doing is identifying some obstacles and opportunities that we could work on and figure out, are they local development ordinances, are they state building codes, are they embodied in some other policy framework that we're going to have to work on over time, and also to put some ideas on the table to say, okay, what other needs do our communities have that we might be able to address as we look to what a school of the future might be. So we're having to recreate or create anew what a building strategy might be. For example, there's a lot of conversation about affordable housing. You're on the Wake County Task Force for Affordable Housing. Affordable housing currently means probably a $300,000 house in western Wake County in terms of applying the traditional formula for what would be affordable. I don't know many teachers who can afford that. Probably not many police officers or firemen either. So is there an opportunity for us to look at going up with a full school structure where there might be affordable housing or targeted income housing or restricted public employee housing on upper floors? I don't know what the barriers would be to that from a planning standpoint, from a policy standpoint. I want to try to identify what those things are. Similarly, many times children are taken out of school in order to go to doctors and dentists. Does it make sense to have a multi-use floor that's available for medical practitioners? And then how do we control access, provide safety and security, and all those other things that go into that? Part of the challenge is just pure footprint of schools. When the history of this goes back to, I won't go back about 12 years, maybe a little longer than that, when people are saying, well, why don't you build up? Why don't you build up? Why don't you build up? And in fact, we have been building up. The economic break point back in the early 2000s was if the land cost more than $50,000 an acre, it made sense to go up. If it didn't, it made sense to stay basically at one level. It's been a long time since land cost $50,000 an acre in western Wake County. So going up is something we do. Now, there are some restrictions. If we talk about elementary school, every service to a kindergarten or first grade student must be at grade. So that means the media center, the cafeteria, the gymnasium, the administrative offices, any special education services, and all of your classrooms have to be at grade. That's really what drives the footprint. And if we're looking at urban schools, a rooftop play area would not be at grade, for example. It may work out okay for a middle school, but for the students who are in first and kindergarten and first grade, it wouldn't be. So those are some concerns about footprint. And if we look at, this information was in the PowerPoint that you shared with quite a few people. If we look at an urban school, there are almost 9 acres of a 20-acre site dedicated to regulatory requirements. So how might we work together if we're looking at redevelopment or smaller footprint greenfield development to curtail some of those requirements, recognizing that they're important environmental concerns, they're important community concerns, but how might we work together to figure out how those things, landscape buffers, stormwater retention, stream buffers, they're all important. No, I say they're not important. If we don't have a 20-acre site, how do we accommodate those things? Particularly if we look at infill, if we look at or redevelopment of a site that's been abandoned, or it may be a strip mall or a strip shopping center, and it's a 6-acre site, is it possible that we could redevelop that? Given the current regulatory requirements, it would be difficult. So how might we look at the redevelopment animal? And I have no experience in municipal planning, all right, none. So I don't pretend to go there. But I'm asking questions, and hopefully we can come out of this conversation and others with a series of questions that need answers. And hopefully, perhaps staff can help us find some of those answers, at least for this municipality. And then we've got a county and 11 other municipalities to have similar conversations with as we look forward and continue to provide schools for our community. So that's, I'd love to hear some feedback on those things. Let me tell 2 other stories. Number one is we do planning on a 7-year cycle. We have an external resource that collects building permit data, live birth data, in-migration, out-migration data, employment, unemployment and employment data, all kinds of demographic information. And then out of that, they tell us we're expecting this many students to come to Wake County. And of that number, this many we expect to be in the public school system. Mm-hmm. And based on how they look at growth, then where might we need a school in the next 3, 4, 5, 6 years? That's the mechanism that's in place today to do our school planning and site selection. And after they say we need a school in this area, then our real estate people go out and start looking for sites. And that's where these issues come up, right, is when we're looking for a site. And we looked at the Copper site. Nobody wanted to put a school on top of a EPA brownfield. You know, I mean, that was available. It was flat. It had utilities there. I mean, it had a lot of good things. We weren't going to put a school there. So those factors come into play. The other thing that I will say is, for years, there's been a high school circle. Our maps typically have had circles on them. So somewhere in this 5-mile radius, need to find some land. There's been a circle between Crabtree Valley and Leesville Road High School where it says we need to find 45 net usable acres, which typically is a 65 to 70 acre site, somewhere between Crabtree and Leesville High School. Well, it doesn't exist. It's not there, which is another indicator that says we've got to start thinking about how we're going to do things differently as we continue to grow and provide excellent educational opportunities for our kids at all ages. So with that kind of on the table, love to get some input, what your questions might be, where we might go for answers.
I guess there's been some thoughts about how can we help provide that data that you're receiving externally to make sure that it's as accurate as possible from our standpoint, because we're boots on the ground. We're really close to this. So I think that was one thought. I believe that our staffs are already talking to each other at that level to a great deal. So
that is supposed to be the case.
Yeah. So.
And it does. So they work with Itri, who does a lot of forecasting.
And Mike Miller, who's left Itri, got his own organization now.
And so every year they're asking for information. And it actually, I mean, it used to not be every year, but it's picked up. So the information is more and more accurate. And so we are providing them our information and our latest geographic data that they're requesting annually. So that way they can then make predictions in the most accurate manner. So we do provide that information. And that's just GIS level parcel. And I do know they do work with the county as well. We meet kind of a regional planner meeting where the conversations happen annually. So at that pace, when county's there as well, they're the ones that are providing all the actual county level building permit data. So that includes all jurisdictions as well as anything at the county. So they're providing them, in theory, all the new households that are occurring that way as well. So there's a part that we're already playing in that.
Is there a lag in how people are actually populating that housing, though? Because the way people are choosing to live these days, maybe they're putting more people in these. Do you feel like maybe there's a lag there? Maybe we're special in our multi-generational housing.
Could I ask the question a different way? The count frequency is important. Annual is good, but the rate that Morrisville, Cary, and all of Western Wake are growing, annual might not be frequently enough to represent the rate and demand. Maybe 6 months is a way to increase that frequency. Quarterly would probably not be of value, but 6 months would be. The other thing is we also have to take into account, when do we count? Do we count when a house has a certified occupancy, or do we count when the parcel has been approved for improvement into a new subdivision? Because although we cannot truly count that there's 200 homes that have just been approved and we expect it in 18 months to see them, just when is the right time to do that count? Because I think it's already too late when you have the house built. We know that in the last 4 months, we've approved several different developments in Morrisville because of where it was in the pipeline. They all just kind of fell into the tight time frame at one time, though they've been planned for maybe 2 years. So when we approve those developments, is that where you count, or is it further along when in the planning process itself?
We provide both. So we give them, to give you an idea of when we talk kind of at the county level, in Wendell Falls, well, not in Morrisville, it was a huge development that was approved. And so that was part of the conversation. Here's all these additional units that we know will be coming. The same thing, before Kitts Creek was built, before Providence Place was built, we're letting them know that there's, at the time, I think 711 or 720 units at Kitts Creek. We let them know how many units are coming. They have access to, when we actually did our census update, it changed the size of our household. Our households grew. That's more information that they're able to use as well. Now, I can't speak for the school system as to how often they're taking that information and evaluating it. If it is or is not more than annually, we're just giving them specific data on an annual basis.
Just is this format we're allowed to? Well, just as a follow-up to that, I think sometimes the concern becomes when we approve development, how real-time is that data? When we get the briefing item saying, this is the number of kids in the school system. So I think it would be very helpful for us to, get that kind of information, how these formulas are being calculated, just in terms of the data of the schools, of the elementary kids living in, proposed developments. The only two questions I had, and just for...
See, if I may, let me respond to that. If we're planning 7 years,
right,
and it takes a year to design or a year and a half to design and another year to build, real-time data doesn't affect those near years. So the urgency of real-time updating is I think, a good question for us to have. Does it change anything that happens in the next 3 years is another question. And typically when we go out to the public for funding support, there's an expectation that what we say we're going to do in years 4 and 5 gets done. So then the question is, how flexible are those out years? We've changed our process to be a 7-year rolling plan. I think it's an annual review, as opposed to a 3-year or a 4-year chunk of schools that will be built. And with the help of the county commission, we've migrated to that 7-year rolling plan. So there is opportunity to review and to make adjustments within those 7 years. It's unlikely an adjustment would be made that would have an impact closer than 3 years, more likely 4 years, just given the development cycle. Even if we own the land, it still takes more than 2 years to put a school on the ground.
Well, the visibility data could be more helpful to us, though, too, just in terms of when we see a development, knowing in real time. But that's maybe something we can work through. Just two questions as one question I have is, much of the citizen comments that were given and some of the frustration is the fact that the massive growth in Morrisville from, just a few thousand people to 27,000. And I think sometimes, when I talk to citizens, they have a hard time understanding, even though we have a process of, what the process is when we determine a new school. And so I would be curious as to are the factors that, we're surrounded by a larger municipality and that there's feeder patterns that we have to go through. I mean, I know this isn't simple cookie cutter stuff, but that would be interesting to me to go. I've been to your website, but just to really learn more of how those decisions are made. The other thing that I've heard is quality of life issues, busing long distances and overcrowded schools, and some of these things are out of our control. But I think at the end of the day, I'm just sort of giving you my feedback. If we could figure out a way, I love the fact that you're challenging us to be creative and innovative. If there's a way we can think out of the box and go up, or do something where we can build more schools, have a sense of community. I'm very surprised. The final point I'll end with is I'm always shocked that of the $1.25 billion that Wake County gets from the school for the schools, we're only getting $10 million from the state. Is that correct?
For the capital budget, Wake County receives $10 million from the lottery fund. That's all we get for capital. And that goes to the county, doesn't come to the school district, goes to the county, and the county applies that to the debt service on building schools. So essentially, it's supporting building schools, but there's a $10 million annual limit. Our budget annually is $325 to $350 million. That's paid for out of local property taxes.
Because one way of thinking out of the box, and that's my final point, because I want to give everyone else a chance, is, like the DOT made a lot more investments in the urban area roads where there was so much growth based on vehicle counts. So Morrisville has received over $290 million over the last couple of years. And, is there a way, in addition to getting out of the box at the local level, whether we can go to the governor and the state legislature and Senate and say, what can we do to tie funding more to the growth of areas where there's just so much growth? Now, maybe this is already being done, but I'm just trying to think big picture.
There is a bill in the legislature for a state school construction bond referendum, which will likely be on the ballot in November. It is anticipated to be several $billion. The distribution formula that's in the works at the moment would basically put Wake County at the back end of the line because of our ability to pay. I don't have the exact numbers with me, but for a smaller county that may have a $1.20 tax rate on their property values as opposed to 61 cents, they may get $3 per dollar or $5 per dollar they put into their capital plan. Wake County is going to get less than $1 match on our capital plan. We have to be spending the money. I want to say that based on what's on the table today, Wake County will get somewhere around $185 million over the life of that bond program, which is great. It's half of 1 year's expenditures.
Okay.
All right. It will help. It will postpone. It will be part of the mix, assuming the voters of North Carolina approve it. Is there a possibility of changing that formula to be more directed on growth? Given the legislature is, particularly the House, is 85% rural, not urban, it's doubtful. And that's history. The bond referendum we had 20 years ago at the state level, we basically set up this same formula where counties, really the school infrastructure in our state is in really bad shape. There's about an $8 billion express need across the state for renovating schools, building new schools, and abandoning schools that are completely out of date and too expensive to repair. So that's an interesting conversation to have with our representatives in the legislature.
Okay.
There may be a small possibility. History would suggest it'd be an uphill battle. But out of the box, absolutely.
Well, thank you for that.
Kathy, go.
Would you like to wait? Okay.
I haven't let you say a word yet.
I understand.
Hi, Kathy. How are you?
No. I'm fine. You have a time limit. I don't.
So, for me, I got to be very honest. When last time we heard from person after person, and this was not the first time, we have heard these kind of things, and I appreciate because I've heard live streams. You go through this, several of these, and the basic question is, why do we have these kind of conversations? It is a mother's instinct, a father's instinct. We had kids who were talking. We had tears from fathers, mothers who were basically coming and giving engineering solutions there. And the mind that was going out from my thinking was, I joined the council 2 years ago, and I was thinking the same way. Let's come up with an engineering solution. And Martha told me, no, that's not how it works. You are on the policy decision, and let us take care of the solution and implementation. So my question here is exactly what you came up with, Bill, is our pitch here is we want stability, proximity, and quality of life to our kids here. Somewhere down the line in Morrisville, because of being a small town, because of its land, I don't know the reason. A perfect example for it is in a town retreat. You came up with a good example is you have this 7-year plan. The same extrapolation, like my dad is a demographer, and I've here done this and read his books. Carolina Population Center gave us a presentation, and they gave a beautiful presentation last time, which I think Martha can give. 1 in 4 come into Morrisville from Southeast Asia. They come here, and there is a migration going on, they said, from zip code 27560 to zip code 27519 after a couple of years. And we talked, why was that? It could have been the buildings that we are, the houses that we have might not be the right. But more you start thinking about it, school is a factor of it too. And my neighbors have left, and it's something around it. It's how you extrapolate the data could also be a part of it, because census is raw data, and is nowadays with big data and everything. So I want you guys to look into that because I understand, because 2 years ago when I was sitting there, the whole rubber bands and how things are, the new neighborhoods come in, and if a school is here and if the new neighborhoods come in, they get the first preference internally. So if something that can be worked out, what happened to the old neighborhood? Why are they getting bumped out? And those kind of areas, if you can start looking into, so that somewhere Morrisville, because of its proximity, like Davis Drive, 3 of the neighborhoods were slated to be removed. Mills Park was removed out previously. Every time it's a continuous challenge, and that's where the redistricting is such a big thing for Morrisville over a period of last 15 years, and that is where we see the need of engineering of middle school. Cedar Fork, for example, from last 5 years, being a school of elementary, which is Morrisville traditional, it's capped. And so it's not helping, even a school which is traditional. So, but how do you do it? So that is where I'm not an expert, but the main thing is student stability, proximity, and quality of life. How can you get that to Morrisville? Because that's the way we can keep the people here.
And as you said, the school board receives that kind of input often from parents and things like that.
And as far as the UDO thing you said, you bring a very good point about urban schools. I think a couple of months ago, we signed up a document, right? All the constructions for UAE buildings will be, Courtney, correct me if I'm wrong, that there was for Parkside Elementary, I think
they do their own inspections.
They have their own inspections, right? But does that mean
all Wake County facilities will have their own inspections? So that includes libraries, EMS.
Exactly. So they have their own UDO control, right? Is that what it means?
They still adhere to our regulations.
So the site plan review is basically whether you have the right number of parking, the right number of trees. I always say planning kind of looks for pretty. So that part stays within Morrisville's control.
Okay.
It's the building code, which is the state building code. That part, the county is 100% responsible for, and it just creates continuity in the construction management since it's headed off one basically kind of location.
So answer to that, Bill, you have more control other than our thing is just we look at that part, but you pretty much have a super veto there, like to basically.
Well, no, she's talking about the county, not the school district.
Yeah, but county,
Right.
you own the county's point of view. You pretty much.
Well,
There still needs to take a look at the UDA regulations. There's still some barriers there.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the purpose of this meeting, is to sort of help them understand what our regulations and our barriers are so that they can take that back and sort of start to gather the information they need to start to address the issue.
if I were to, I don't know, Kathy, if you want to jump in, if I were to look at the quality of education in the schools in Western Wake, I don't know that you can really determine a difference in outcomes for kids.
They're top notch.
Okay? So then the challenge becomes how do we provide that stability and reasonable proximity? I think stability is more important than proximity, frankly, my personal view, although there's a diversity of opinion on the board. In years past, when southern part of the western Wake County was really growing fast, we had a concept called satellite nodes. And when a subdivision identified itself, we would draw a circle around it, and we would say, okay, you're not going to bump kids out of Apex High School. We're going to send you over to Athens, for example. The people bought their homes there knowing that they were going to have a school that was not close by. And over years, as we built schools, we were able to undo many of those satellite nodes. So if I go to the Scottish Hills community in Cary, we had the same thing with the elementary schools. They would say, well, at Apex, they would say, we've been going to Apex High School for 20 years. Why are you going to move us? Move the new people. And the new people then become the us over time. And they're saying, why do we have to be so far away from our school? So there is a dynamic. And former mayor of Cary was Coca Booth, bless his heart. He was passionate about schools. He said, Bill, why do you have to move kids? We can build a fire station and identify a geography that it's going to serve. Why do you have to redistribute kids? I said, because houses don't grow up, children do. And we wind up with typically we're not finding empty spaces in western Wake County, but schools will age out, neighborhoods will age out. And as we're watching that very carefully as our elementary population is maturing into middle school, do we have the right number of spaces? And we don't. And we're working hard to catch up on that. So it's a very dynamic and fluid situation. And I appreciate you phrasing it in such a concise way. And it is a concern that we have. Are we responding as best we are able to that challenge? And I'm not sure I can say that we are at the moment. There's an opportunity for us to always improve.
So can I just add a couple of things in this conversation? I love the comment or the saying, where there's a will, there's a way. So I really believe that we have you talked about obstacles. I believe there are opportunities here. And I think we have the will to help you all find those opportunities here in Morrisville for whatever schools moving forward, whether it be a middle school, a high school. I really don't think there are a whole lot of obstacles that we can't overcome, and I'm really happy to hear, Bill, you talk about the new urban school and thinking out of the box, and Kathy's heard me say this before. My children went to Lufkin Road Middle School, which is south of US 1 down in Apex, and that was an old factory, but I don't even remember anymore now what the building was.
Sterilization plant.
Yeah. We didn't have a gym. My kids got a great education. They didn't need the gym. We played basketball games in another facility.
You just have a pole in the middle.
There was a pole in the middle. You are exactly right. We learned to work around that pole for all kinds of events. But
significant hazard.
So I think we have those opportunities here in Morrisville, whether it be new undeveloped land, there's some of that, whether it be buildings that could be refurbished, whatever they are, whether they're old factory buildings, old shopping centers. We have an old, it's not an old, we have
soon to be vacant Sam's Warehouse.
I was just going to say that was one of it, and it's really not that old.
It's partly in Durham County.
Yeah, that's correct.
So
I guess my point is that we're all willing, and I know you're all willing, so I think together we're going to be able to find a way. And clearly we have citizens here that are willing, and they're helping us in this conversation. So I just want to make sure you hear that message too loud and clear. And I think together we can solve this. And this urban schools going up, I think you're right. I think moving forward, whether it's, 6 months from now or 60 years from now, that is going to have to be the way to do business around here.
Will not be sufficient.
Right. So we need to start working in that. So I guess I ask, what are you all doing as you're having these conversations about urban schools? And because you just said you have a staff that really is not familiar with that yet.
This is the first of those conversations outside of our board scratching their heads saying, do we really want to build a school in Durham County and call it a Wake County school? Which was that tract of land we looked at. And we decided we didn't. And even if we could get it approved by all the governmental units that had to sign off on it, it's not a solution long-term for Wake County. So I would really like to ask staff if they could respond to the questions of multiple use of a school facility for things like doctor's offices or targeted income housing that would be in segregated floors. We have just completed our first public-private partnership in the development of a school that's going to be built in southeast Raleigh. The YMCA owns the building. We will be leasing our portion of the building from them. And there's I think that's a very positive thing for us to do. But just from what you ladies know about the challenges of commingling development types, what are we looking at? What are some of the big rocks?
Can we hold the big rocks? I wanted everybody to speak first. I had a couple questions as I'm listening. Courtney, do you feel confident that the data that you're providing to our county planners, to Wake County schools, to the whole thing, is accurate data?
I think the data that we're providing is accurate, yes.
Yeah, you feel good about that?
I do feel good about it. Where I get a little worried, if I'll be honest, is, council asked that with our projects just to provide them some background data as new projects are coming through. And one of the ones, it can be how many trips, is one thing, but then it's how many potential students. That number, just by driving by bus stops, I personally feel is a little low. I think that we are actually generating more students than the latest information I have. And so I know I'm using a county-wide number.
Yes, so looking at our formula that we're using.
It may be fine on a county-wide data, but if you can give jurisdictional specific data, it would be extremely helpful to us so that we have a better understanding. It will also help us as we're in the process of updating our land use plan, and we can use that information to give to a consultant to help us truly understand the fiscal impact that any particular either single family apartment is really having on the entire network.
Yeah, can I add to that? Because when Courtney brings us those numbers, when we're looking at a development and we look at the number of middle school, elementary, high school, all 7 of us go, there's no way. These numbers are not reflective of what we are seeing here in Morrisville. So we have that conversation all the time.
Well, then the next comment has to be, but we really don't have authority to make decisions based on that. Municipal. I mean, the way the state has us set up, we're split.
Right.
Over who has responsibility.
We're both kind of boxed in as to how we can use that information. But truly, we believe that in Morrisville, we have a denser amount of children because we're a growing community, and growing communities usually have more children than established and
Very young demographics.
Yes. So,
We were talking about the 250 townhouse community going in, and I think you said 26, 29 children, and like I said, it doesn't make any sense. But it may make sense based on a formula that does not take into account the density in Morrisville.
or the recency. Or the recency.
And to add to that, we talked to one or two multifamily apartment guys. They're changing their formula too because their mindset is now apartment complex. Previously were only 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom. Now they're increasing to 3 bedroom apartment. They want people to stay there as a stability point of view. So when a person has a 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, it's very likely they'll have kids and the number of people will increase. So when we get those indicators with the same formulas, it doesn't make any sense to when we see 350 apartments and have only.
Okay, I'd like Kathy to continue.
I want to ask you one other thing.
That was a great question that led to something that really useful.
Listed your the things that you feel the Morrisville community wants. I think I heard you right. Proximity, quality of life, and stability as being your 3. Correct? Okay.
Yeah.
Put stability listed first.
I'm not sure that.
Which one?
No, I heard stability, proximity, quality of life.
Yes.
But is that the order?
Yes. Because stability because they're continuously redistricting and because the future is becoming a biggest problem. We do not know which neighborhood they're kind of becoming a cat race. Okay, let's go to the other neighborhood. This will go feature to that school. And that's becoming, and that's the reason people are moving. So we don't want that.
Okay, let's let Kathy continue, Steve.
Finish all your questions.
Steve, do you think it would help the community? We were talking about, we do our 7-year rolling plan, okay? But right now, if we could put together something for you, for the citizens to say, we're about to open Alston Ridge in 1920. Back it up and say, in year X, this is what the data told us we needed a circle here. In other words, for that specific school, what were the steps and what were the numbers that said this is where we need to build a school?
Yeah, that would be helpful, I think.
It's sort of like an example of how we get there, because one of the things that's a really good thing about Morrisville is that your community really they want to be in the weeds. They simply want to understand.
Right.
They don't want to just they want to have a clear understanding.
Well, that would be very helpful. That would be very helpful. And as a follow-up to that, I have to leave at 2:30, by the way, so I just have 3 o'clock. But I want to thank everyone for coming and all the citizens as well who are listening or are here. As a follow-up to that, I think that like the other challenge that I see, and Bill, you brought this up, is the cost of land. That's the reality of the situation, right? Land costs money. And I know that in 2016, there was an article in the News Observer that said that the Wake County School Board was looking at Morrisville as a place for a high school. And I think sometimes that's where I see a lot of citizens would like more money being paid to buy the land to meet a need that they don't feel is being met to have a high school. But we don't have money. If the money's $200,000 an acre or $150,000 an acre, we know it's a showstopper. So I don't know whether we can make an argument where can we get more money, or some of the areas of land, the McCrimmon area. We talked about UDO changes. We have over 400 acres out there. I know that there's going to be opportunity there are landowners that own some of them up to 80 acres. So there might have to be introductions made to some of these people that own these large parcels to to say, okay, how much Wake County wants to build a school, in Morrisville. So I think the cost is oftentimes a prohibitive factor when we do land. And so I just wanted to throw that out there as a...
Because I think this is an important topic too. I would be curious to know how much of the tax money that's generated in Morrisville goes to Wake County, and then in the end goes to Wake County schools. I think our land, because our land is valuable, right. I think we send probably a good portion or a good percentage of what y'all receive comes from Morrisville, based on population, based on land size. I would think we send a great deal as a community, a great deal of our tax money to Wake County, and then in the end to the Wake County schools. So if we're generating a whole lot of money, then even if our land is kind of expensive, we're still generating a lot of money too. So it kind of goes hand in hand.
And the final point, I promise my final point today, but the one thing as I look at our processes, the one thing that we clearly don't have is when a developer comes into our town and says, we want to build and it's going to impact the traffic. When we do a TIA analysis and we say you have to pay either 150% of the cost, and now we're looking at different models for that. If you come in and we have a payment in lieu for parks, where they pay for greenways, they pay for parks. We do not have any kind of say in how development pays for school construction costs. And I know I'm speaking up, I'm going uphill with this, but I truly believe that if we had that authority, impact fees, and to charge developments, because they're coming into our community, they're building all these developments that are having an impact. And I know I'm preaching to the choir, but I have to go on the record and say this, because I want people to know that could generate millions of dollars of revenue where we would be able to build up the cash we don't have to purchase the land, right? At whatever it is.
So now we're getting into some larger policy.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just had to throw it out there while they were here.
But I will say, last year the legislature removed the ability to charge impact fees for 3 communities. So no municipality or school or county in North Carolina today has legislative authority to charge an impact fee for schools. And that, whatever side of that debate you're on, given the current legislature, it ain't going to change. So I appreciate that.
Kathy, did you?
I got my questions. Yes, okay. Thank you. And I also want to say, you have to. I would ask for grace in the fact that Mr. Fletcher has been on the board for 17 years and working with facilities, and so he is my go-to person. For the details and the history and so forth. So my silence does not mean I'm not engaged. I've already taken tons of notes because I want to hear. But that, for some reason, I felt like I needed to let y'all know why. I do a lot of listening.
A lot of institutional wisdom right here and a lot of commitment from you two to be here today to try to move this forward.
Yes, and he has that. Now, if you want to talk about the institutional history of academics in Wake County schools and test scores and how to be a principal and all those kinds of things, you'll see Mr. Fletcher will turn to me at the board table and say, Kathy, tell me what you think about this. So
absolutely,
it's a great working relationship, and I'm really appreciative of the conversation, because when y'all contacted us, can we do this? My first thing is always, tell me why we can't. I don't see any reason, because great ideas come from the collaboration of all of us working together and understanding. So going back to Bill's rocks, because I just looked at that before we got to the rocks. Thank you.
Okay.
So just a couple things. One, to give you an idea at the rate of our household size, of how it's changed, I quickly pulled some numbers. So in January of 2010, our average household size was 2.43. And that's for single-family attached to detached, townhomes and single-family residential. So when you were using your modeling for your 7-year predictor, that was the number you were working off of for our jurisdiction. Move forward to June of 2013, it's at 2.7. Now moving forward to where we are now, it's 2.86. So we have changed significantly. Now, I can't tell you if that's adults within that number that's changing it, but clearly our household size is growing. So it could be multi-generational, it could be larger family size. There's potential several reasons, but I think that's just kind of an important thing to kind of keep in mind. We are changing here, and we've changed a lot. And a lot of our changes have happened over the time where you're trying to forecast 7 years in advance. As for the big rocks, they're not big rocks. I mean, they're kind of non-existent, honestly. We allow elementary, middle, and high school in all of our regional activity centers. And all regional activity centers strongly encourage mixed-use development. And we don't define parameters on our mixed use. So we don't say you have to have 20% this, 30% that of the different principal uses. So I don't see that as a barrier at all for the school system.
From a planning system.
That's correct. From the UDO development regulations, it's simply just not a barrier.
Okay.
Okay, so you could have apartments above a school.
Yes.
Okay, that's very interesting because that's
Where,
not something I ever
where
thought
do
of.
the barriers show up? I mean, is there a building code issue? Is there?
I guess parking. Maybe.
I'm sure there's I'm sure there will be a finance issue. Using public money to pay for apartments is probably a challenge, or that's where the public-private partnership might come in, where there's a private developer who's paying for the upper floors because they're going to rent them out to doctors or residents. And I don't know. I need to talk with our school board attorneys as well about the permissions. I do know historically there's been a concept called a teacherage, where the school would have a place where teachers would live. There'd be a common area where they could work together, and it would be a modest housing situation. Green Oak High School had one in its original form years ago. There used to be one out off of Millbrook Road in that area of the county. And I think Dare County, through the legislature, got funding to build a teacherage in Dare County because it is so expensive to live there. So exploring those options is something that we'll have to do as well.
And call it what again? Tell me what you called it. A
teacherage.
Teacherage.
They just moved one off of Leesville Road to make way for the new Publix on Leesville Road. There was a teacherage been there, and they've moved it for historical purposes.
I think Mayor Pro Tem Scroggins-Johnson had a question that she
Yes.
wanted to put.
I am a project manager by profession, and I love process and I love structure. So I took it upon myself to study your facilities page on the Wake County Public Schools. And you have a really nice description of your 7-year strategic plan. And I looked at it, and I looked at the map, and I was excited to see Parkside Elementary, which is an RTP, by the way, for members of the audience, but it's technically aligning with Morrisville. And there was also the Alston Ridge Middle School that was on the map. But what I didn't see is a middle or high school on Western Wake that was coming up in the next 7 years, and I was a little bit sad until I read the fine print, and it says, note, there are several elementary schools, 2 middle schools, and 2 high schools that have not yet been identified. That gives me hope that if we work together, if we listen to each other, if we keep the dialogue going, we could have a high school or middle school for Morrisville.
Mm-hmm. Let me talk about the high school for just a second.
Yes.
Because if I go back to my space diagrams here, which I thank you for sharing this because I hadn't seen this in a while. Our typical high school acreage would be 65, and 28 of that is buffers and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And a whole bunch of it's play fields, or from a academic program standpoint, are we as a community ready to go to a school that doesn't have its own competition fields and use shared fields to do that? Well, a football, soccer, track stadium is 6 acres. You would need some other spaces for teams to practice. even if they played their competition games at a shared facility, it would change some of the dynamics within the school in terms of the booster club being successful and things like that. It's a place we're probably going to have to go.
Is that something that we can help with the interaction with the residents to sort of get a feel and take their temperature if they're okay with that? Or how can we help you guys determine that?
I would think opening dialogue without taking position would be
right.
Helpful. We put our toe in that water recently when we were opening a technical school in northern Wake County. And the original statement was that we were not going to provide interscholastic athletics for the students who chose to attend this school. And that was clearly communicated. And after we selected the students, we got application after application after application. I didn't realize. Let me out of my commitment to go to this school. And we relented, and they can do their interscholastic sports. I'm not sure which facility. Maybe it's Wakefield. I'm not sure where we wound up. We had to do that. It can cause some challenges. Just on the other side of that coin, if a crack tennis player comes into your school that doesn't attend there, I saw that, Steve, and takes a spot on the tennis team that last year someone had, now have we created a, I'm not sure what the noun would be. Is it an unfair competition for someone who doesn't attend the school to come in and take a starting spot on the team? And so that creates all kinds of interesting dynamics among 17-year-olds.
Happens in our middle schools too.
Yeah.
We've got Hilburn, which is a K-8 school, in the 6 through 8 who play sports at Leesville Middle School. There's been there's challenges with that.
Right.
So they can be worked through. We haven't successfully worked through them yet.
Okay.
And now the other thing where I was heading with this is the smaller footprint school. The school district now owns the Bobby Murray Chevrolet site on Capitol Boulevard. That's 12 acres. It's 12 acres, and there's not a lot of it that's flat. So as we look at what kind of school to put in that location, and what will its physical structure be, it's going to be a new program. It's going to be something without competition fields. It's going to be a different educational program than we've got anyplace else in Wake County, just because it has to be on 12 acres of land. We currently have a parcel of land northeast of Apex, down between Holly Springs and South Cary. And right now, that would support 1,000 students, not 2,200 students. So if we're able to buy more land, maybe we build a 2,200 student campus. If we're not, is there a smaller program that makes sense there? So where I'm going with that is the county has to go to the conversations about how to do academic programs on a smaller footprint. Whether it's done in Morrisville or someplace else in Wake County, it's time for us to have that conversation and to make sure that we've got the right people to the table to have both the facility and the academic program design to serve children for the next 40 years.
One creative, this is really out of the box, so some people might be surprised I'm bringing this up, but I've heard some economists say that with online shopping that there's overabundance of grocery stores in the area and that you're starting to see some traditional large retail establishments shut down. I mean, would that be something if, I don't know if you could build a school and a grocery store, but if you had all this land, like let's say, I'm not going to name a store because I don't want to get in trouble, but let's say a grocery store decides they're closing down shop. They just can't afford it because we just have so many. Could there be an opportunity to go in there and say, okay, we'll build a school here?
You've done that. Didn't you have a ninth grade center and a...
Okay. I mean, just...
done that in SNAP projects in much, much, much smaller footprint.
All right.
We're talking...
Well, that'd be reuse as opposed to redevelopment.
Reuse, okay, yeah.
Right? And Lufkin was a reuse. Laurel Park Elementary was a reuse. The Wakefield, for a while it was ninth grade center. Today it's our Career Technical Center in the Wakefield area was a grocery store once upon a time. The Dick's, what is now Dick's Sporting Goods over at Crossroads in Cary, when the home improvement store that was there vacated town after Home Depot opened up, they just left. They didn't wait to lose money. We tried to rent that, lease that space for a school, and the landlord said, "No way, we don't want a school in our shopping center." I said, "Why not? You have 600 parents coming in twice a day, and you don't want those people in your shopping center?" They said no, and Dick's has been there ever since.
Okay.
So yes, we want to pursue those things. It takes the other party to help us be successful as well. So I think we're reasonably open to opportunities. And we looked at a site in North Raleigh that had a capacitor manufacturing operation there, and the environmental study said you don't want to put a school here. You just don't want to put a school here, in spite of the fact that you could put the school on the edge of the site that didn't have the chemical plume going through the water table. We just didn't think that was something our public would support, and it wouldn't have been responsible for us to do that.
Yeah.
Can I?
Thank you.
I was going to say, I think this council and town is committed to helping you think outside the box and find opportunities, and we want to help you do that throughout Western Wake, all your districts and things like that. It's a bigger problem than just Morrisville. Liz wants to say something.
Well, I know we promised an hour, but I'd really be curious as to why you wouldn't build a school that partially would be in Durham County, because there would be lots of ways to move that line and make it all Wake County. There'd be some, I'm not saying there'd be easy options, but one of those I think all obstacles can be overcome, but why would you not?
But in that case, it would require legislative approval.
Yep, that's
It
right.
would have required both county commissions,
Yep.
both school boards,
Yep.
and both planning jurisdictions to do all the inspections and whatnot.
I think you could overcome that. Is that why? Because of all what you just said. Is there any other reason? I knew all that.
Not that I recall.
No,
There may have been.
I think you could.
Basically, it's the governmental challenges, and particularly having to go to the legislature. Let me share this with you. And legislators know this. There are a couple of folks at the legislature who are not interested in supporting what's best for our schools at the moment. And so we didn't see that investing political capital and getting that through the legislature was a good use of our resources at the moment.
Well, I'd love to have that conversation. I think you've got, this is only a handful of the folks that would be with you in that path to success.
I had a very interesting meeting. You had a chat with a certain young lady recently. This morning she came to my chat with a full page of questions. And she was asking, for what should we advocate? Mm-hmm. And I think that's a great question, and we need to figure out exactly what are the few things that would have greatest impact that we could work together to effect through the legislature.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so
That's what this meeting's about.
You got,
So thank you
a
so
lot of
much.
battles. I
Well,
get that.
I do want to add to the conversation that when I first came on the board just a year ago, it's one of the things that, as I look at educational opportunities for kids all around our district, that I am interested in a smaller footprint, not just for Morrisville, but as a way to look at how do we best serve our kids, because 2,200 size high schools can work, but not all kids thrive in 2,200.
absolutely.
And having some choice in program, because as we look at what's happening with so many of our kids, college is not the option for them. They want a shorter track. They're getting so much in high school that they can take 2 more years in a certified type program and do just as well with no debt. And that's really something that's strapping our kids. So looking at things that would cover would be specialized theme types of, and even a couple themes within a high school. So it would give some stability. You're going there because of the theme would give the stability. Might not be proximity because you might have to travel. Because I can see if we were to put a small print in Morrisville, doesn't mean that someone who lives in downtown Raleigh might not also want to come there. And I'm not thinking magnet school. I'm thinking theme school. And our Bobby Murphy is a great, we've had one presentation already on what that might look like. I want to see more ideas, not just one, to best meet the needs of our kids. I think that has to be the priority, is because though we say proximity is important, I just remember my daughter driving 19 miles one way to get to school in high school because it had the program that best fit her need. And families are willing to make sacrifices, including buying her a brand new car at 16, and no 16-year-old deserves or has earned, in my opinion, a brand new car. But it was the cheapest car I could buy, too. Remember, I was a teacher. Just so I knew she wasn't going to break down on the side of the road driving 19 miles. And bless her heart, she kept that car for 10 years. And it did go to the dump after that.
Well, so I'm really happy to hear that. So you all know Cedar Fork Elementary, I think, was the first elementary school that was built on that two-story floor plan that you took, Cedar Fork Elementary. I'm pretty sure if it wasn't the first, it was maybe the second. It was one of the first.
Actually, the Olds Elementary in Raleigh is a 3-story.
Well, so I was going to say, I think we already have shown that we are willing to be the model for whatever new school is out there. So I think we welcome this conversation, and we would welcome being the model for whatever format should come of these urban schools or theme schools.
Well, the other idea too is we have very brilliant designers. Is there a way to design for example, an elementary school in which you don't have to have all of your kindergarten and first graders on the first floor because the design is such that it's still safe for emergencies, fire, marshal, and so forth? I don't know, but there's an awful lot of creative people out there that might be able to figure that out. Because we could create, if we had our art, music, and PE on, because it's very different when you're going to just evacuate 3 classrooms than if you're going to have 15 on the first floor that you have to get out.
Mm-hmm. The place where we have done that I won't say most recently. I thought I had it coming on.
There we go.
I broke it. Cary Elementary was rebuilt, and it happened to be on a site where we could have 2 floors that exited grade.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that meets the requirement. Mm-hmm. So, and we can move dirt and create it,
yep.
Or we can adaptively use a site that has that topographical opportunity. So, we're wanting to do whatever we can to provide a great educational space that'll last the taxpayers for 40 years and support our citizens as they come to us, grow with us, hopefully stay here and work in our community and establish their own houses, own family units here as they mature. So I'm looking at long-term growth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And continuing this conversation, I think that's a perfect note to wrap on.
Good.
That really sort of sums up where we're trying to go. So I'd like to thank the council members, the residents, and these 2 school board members for coming out and initiating this discussion. I hope that we can keep this dialogue going moving forward. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much.